Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jim Jonas with Steve Sanson with Veterans of Politics. We have an exciting show today. We have Stan. Can you go ahead and I'm going to have all our guests go ahead and introduce themselves. So Stan.
Hello.
Hey Steve, how's it going?
Hi, my name is Stan Vaughan. I'm independent American candidate running for Assembly 15.
Okay. Next will be Rob Bear, who is running for Department 32.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Rob Bear, running for District Judge, Department 32.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jack Howard, and I'm running for an open seat in District Court 28.
Very good. Thank you guys very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Campaigning is not, obviously, it's not the easiest thing, but you guys have taken time out of your busy schedules to come in here and answer some questions that we have for you, so we greatly appreciate that. What I would like to start off with is normally what we do is, Steve, do you have any rants today?
Hey, Jim, what's going on? Of course I do. I have a whole bunch of rants.
Yeah, I do too, so let's get that out of the way so we can go to our guests.
First, did you hear about Assemblyman Morris Arbery?
No, actually I didn't.
Assemblyman Morris Arbery resigned from the legislation, and all of a sudden now he's the lobbyist for the Regional Justice Center, or trying to become the lobbyist for the Regional Justice Center at $10,000 a month.
$10,000 a
position.
month. Huh.
Do these judges make that much?
I don't know, but we're going to ask a couple of them.
$10,000. I didn't even know the Regional Justice Center needed lobbyists.
Me either.
I thought they had what's his name, Michael Schomeyer, the administrator for the court. I didn't know they needed a special lobbyist. But that's one of my rants. And then the other one is Bob Ruckman, the Clark County Party chairman for the Republican Party, resigned last week.
Yeah, for, as he calls it, family issues.
Uh-huh.
And then and this is the same Bob Ruckman that when I said I had family issues, I needed to resign, flat out called me a pussy, as a matter of fact. So what does that make him? I'm just throwing that out there. What do you think, Steve? Well, I made Steve Sanson speechless.
We're not.
Write that down on your calendar.
We're not FECC regulated, so I guess we could say that. I guess that makes him a double one then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, Jim. But I like to talk about two of our scheduled guests that was supposed to have been on the show this week. Tracy Mitchell, who is a Clark County Commission candidate for, I believe, District F, I think. It's District F, on the Republican Party. And he's running for that office against the incumbent Susan Berger. But one thing I did that I shouldn't have done is to call up a candidate and let them know what I had on them. I shouldn't have did that.
Yeah, probably.
So I called up Tracy Mitchell and I said, hey, I heard that in another state that you had a count of domestic violence on you for spouse, and you had a count of domestic violence on you for your own child. Do you have any comments? And he was speechless.
Yeah.
And that's when he decided not to come on the show. So for those folks that are out there listening, you probably want to ask Tracy Mitchell about his domestic violence issue on his child and spouse. And you know something? If Tracy was to say to me, it was a while ago, I don't want to talk about that. If we can, could you please refrain from that? I probably would have.
Right.
But the fact that he just flat out not wanted to come on the show, it just makes me think that if he can't handle those questions from us, how is he going to handle questions from his constituents?
Well, I agree. That's why one of my rants is about the president.
And how the hell did he become the Republican Party nominee anyways? I'm speechless with that. I'm just
Really?
Speechless.
So you've been speechless twice today.
Twice.
That's a record.
Your choice of words and Tracy Mitchell not coming on the show because he had a couple counts of domestic violence for spouse and child. And another thing, Ron Israel, if you're out there listening now, Ron Israel scheduled this with me for months. okay? And then he decided not to come on the show. I don't know why. But you know something, folks? If you schedule to be a guest, be a guest. Don't wimp out at the last minute, decide not to come on the show. But we have some brave people here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Jack Howard, who's a Veterans in Politics endorsement winner. And we have Bob Baer, who's another Veterans in Politics endorsement winner. And we have Stan Vaughan, who's the independent candidate for Assembly District 15. But before we get anything, let's go with, you have rants, right?
Yeah.
What's your rant?
My main rant is with the president. Now, I will always give deference to the commander-in-chief. I will always respect the office. But when is he actually going to demonstrate some accountability as a leader? I mean, I'm starting to get really fed up with it could have been worse. With the stimulus package, you say, well, if we wouldn't have adopted the stimulus package, it could have been worse. Well, what exactly does that mean? I mean, we elect leaders to fix things.
That's true.
So, I mean, we've had presidents over the years, many of them Democrat, Republican, that have made mistakes and have just owned up, taken accountability, and said, yeah, we were wrong there. We're going to change course now. The American people, they'll respect that. But I think that's the biggest issue that Obama has right now is he's just not understanding that what he's doing is not working. So he needs to change course.
Jim, are you going to beat up on anybody upset for the president?
No.
Just the president?
Just the president.
You've been on the president for every time we're on the air.
Well, he has to be held accountable at the end of the day. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Bush's domestic policies, but okay, they didn't work,
right,
according to him. So fix them.
True.
I just want to see some results. You can stand up there and talk all day, but if I don't see the results, I don't feel them.
That's true.
Then he's gonna have to. He's just gonna have to own up and do something different. We'll see in November because I'm hoping the American people will send a real strong message.
Well, let's go with Jack Howard, candidate for Clark County District Court Judge, Department 28. Jack, could you give us a bio about yourself, sir?
2-second bio, Steve. That's going to be tough, but been here 36 years. Have 3 amazing kids, 2 in college, 1 still in high school. I've served as Judge Pro Tem in 6 different courts, done several hundred jury and non-jury trials, and been very involved in our community, both on pro bono, special needs adoption agency. And as you said early in the show, I'm very proud to have the Veterans in Politics endorsement, as well as pretty much the whole sweep of law enforcement, PPA, marshals, etc. And thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Jack. Jack, why are you in this race? I understand this is a brand new seat to the Regional Justice Center. Why are you running for judge? Aren't you satisfied being in private practice?
This community has been great to me, and at this point in my career, after 36 years, I'd like to think I know enough through my personal and professional experience and my community involvement in the last portion of my career. Since I'm getting to that point, I'd like to serve the community and hopefully have the respect of all of the lawyers and the litigants.
Do you live right here in the Las Vegas area? Because I see that you used to be Judge Pro Temp over in Boulder City Muni Court.
Actually, I'm proud to say that I live in Boulder City, and the community's been wonderful to me. I've been very involved. My kids have gone to school there. I've served as chairman of the Boulder Park and Rec. Been very involved in Boulder City, and it's a wonderful place to be living, and I would invite all your listeners to make sure they spend more time in Boulder City to help our economy.
And you used to be the former deputy city attorney in the city of Las Vegas.
I did. I was
Is that when Mayor Goodman was mayor?
No, that was before Mayor Goodman, although I've known Oscar for a number of years. The mayor at that time was Bill Breer, and I did major litigation for the city as well as prosecute hundreds of misdemeanor cases. And as you may recall, I represented the city on the Metropolitan Police Commission And actually, during my tenure, that led to the building of the jail and subsequently the RJC.
Well, you know what, Jack? It looked like you have a lot of things dealing with family court. You were the alternate domestic violence commissioner. You were what's the paternity hearing master, alternate to hear contested paternity and child support issues. How come you're not running for family court judge?
Well, actually, my specialty is litigation. I could do family law litigation, criminal, civil litigation. This is a new court, and I chose to use my litigation experience in this court, which ultimately, as everyone knows, is a general jurisdiction, both criminal and civil matters.
Well, let me ask you something. You're a father of 3, right?
I am proud father of 3.
Why did you want to be a foster parent as well?
As you may recall, Steve, I headed up a special needs adoption agency, Aid to Adoption of Special Kids. We were a United Way agency. I did several hundred adoptions at no charge. And we taught Nevada State Welfare at the time that they could place special needs kids, which would mean mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, biracial, older kids. And through that experience, I saw a need in the foster care program, and I put my money where my mouth was, and I took in 2 foster kids who unfortunately went back to their very troubled mother.
You know, you have a very impressive resume, Jack. How come you haven't been elected before?
I've come close, and with a little bit of luck and the grace of God, I'll do it this time, Steve.
Well, we wish you luck. We wish you luck, Jack. Jack, so what would be your? I know you're versed in family law, civil law, and criminal law. Running for Department 28, what would that be more geared to, civil or criminal?
These seats were created with the idea that they would initially be civil seats because of the tremendous volume of civil cases, but it's a general jurisdiction court, and so it would likely evolve both criminal and civil down the road, and I'm confident that the chief judge and the other judges will designate each of the newly elected judges to a specialty that will more closely meet their abilities and experience.
Well, Jack, for our listeners, can you give a definition of the difference between civil and criminal?
Simply put, right now, civil cases over 60,000 end up in civil court. And in civil court, you typically hear contract cases, personal injury cases, anything typically involving money. In criminal cases is pretty much any felony, any high crimes after they get through the justice court or grand jury system.
And since you are a veteran of the Army, how long were you in there for?
I was 6 years reserve and 1 year basically active, and unfortunately Mr. Bear outranks me. I was enlisted E4, and Captain Bear slightly outranks me, but I think we're okay right now.
Slightly, Jack.
Vastly outranks me. Thanks for the reminder.
What do you think about Veterans Court?
I think Veterans Court is a good idea. I think we have veterans with specialized needs that we haven't recognized. And I think just like we have other specialized courts, we need to focus on our veterans. As you know, Steve, and as you know, Jim, they've been oftentimes badly neglected and underserviced, not only in Las Vegas, but nationwide.
And what would you do differently to help out our veterans, being a judge in Department 28?
Well, I think it starts with the recognition that many of our veterans have unique problems that are not typical of the rest of our society. And we know that they have difficulties transitioning back, particularly if they've been in a war zone. So I think it starts with sensitivity and recognition. And also, just like anywhere else in our community, we have to make a commitment to the resources, to make the resources available to help our vets.
You know, a few weeks ago, there was a Army veteran that came back from the Iraq combat theater, and I believe this was in South Carolina, and he killed his pregnant wife and his 7-year-old daughter, and then killed himself. Now, let's say, hypothetically, he tried to kill himself, but it failed, and he is able to appear in front of your court. Hypothetically now, Jack, what would be the first thing that comes through your mind? What would you want to do with this individual?
Well, I can tell you unequivocally, in that case, there would be some type of psychiatric or psychological examination to determine what his state of mind was upon his return from overseas. I mean, instinctively, I don't tolerate murder. And what you have to do is treat every individual as an individual. But, I mean, instinctively, Steve, I'm not a big fan of people killing people.
Okay. You served in the Army 6 years. What do you have from your military experience? What do you have that you're going to bring to the bench?
Well, I think what I would bring from my military experience is a strong sense of discipline, tremendous work ethic, and candidly, I got most of my work ethic not from the military, but a combination of my dad, who was valued hard work and valued education and valued integrity. And as you know, the military, you exist within their confines of discipline, and you have to be self-disciplined to be successful in the military.
Jim?
Well, Jack, what I'd like to follow up with is just in general, how many opponents do you have running against you?
I have one who Steve has mentioned earlier in the show.
Okay, well, I won't mention them by name because as a former candidate, we just don't do that.
I'm not.
We don't announce our opponents' names.
I'm not. I'm just saying it was mentioned earlier.
So what? I mean, Steve has already kind of asked this question, but just to follow up, you talk about hard work, experience, dedication, those things that you learn from the Army and from your dad. So, what does your opponent? Do you really believe that your opponent doesn't have those qualities? What differently can you provide the court that your opponent isn't?
Well, what I think is, and I would invite your listeners to check me out. My website is jackhowardonline.com. And if you look at the number of attorneys and number of prominent citizens who have endorsed my candidacy, as well as the many groups, both the Veterans in Politics, a wide range of law enforcement, the medical groups, a number of the firefighters, SEIU, carpenters. What I am deeply appreciative of is the number of people who publicly have said, you're the right man for this job, and we will support you publicly. And I'm very honored to have that wide range of support.
You know something, Jack? I gotta commend you for going on the John Ralston's show and acknowledging that you did get the Veterans in Politics endorsement, because that opened up a whole can of worms with John Ralston and the Veterans in Politics groups, and a lot of other veterans groups got involved when he made the statements, what does veterans have anything to do with judicial races? And I had to set him straight to let him know about the Sailor Soldiers Act, let him know about post-traumatic stress disorder and how veterans play a role in the judicial system, because there's a lot of veterans that show up in front of judges, a lot. And for veterans not to get involved in judicial races would be a sin, because they need to know who their judicial candidates are, and those judicial candidates that have empathy and compassion because of their service and because they did something foolish and ended up in front of them. But Ralston said to me that judicial candidates should be appointed. And we said back that judicial candidates should not be appointed. You should not take the rights away from the people and to elect their judicial candidates. How do you feel about judicial candidates? Should they be appointed or should they be elected?
In a perfect world, if politics didn't play a part, perhaps the appointive system would be best. However, having been the State Bar appointee to the judicial selection, the best candidate didn't get through, and ultimately, when it went to the governor, it was a pure political appointment. So, unequivocally, as it stands now, I'm in favor of the elective process to give voters a right to choose their judges.
So, Jack, are you saying that if they were appointed, it would be more political than being elected? Because the counter-argument to that is, when John Ralston says he thinks they should be appointed rather than elected, I think what he's really trying to get at is you're bought and paid for. You're bought and paid for by lobbyists if you're elected, because it takes so much money to run a judicial.
Well, that's true, and you're going to have that debate for every office, from the president on down. And I guarantee you that I will bring integrity, and people who contribute to my campaign are doing so because they're either friends or think I will do a good job. I will not be beholden or owing any group, and I'll do my job conscientiously and with integrity.
Well, Jack, I know you gave your point of contact information earlier. Could you give it again, please?
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. It's Jack Howard, HOWARD, jackhowardonline.com. And for your listeners, again, it's Jack Howard, Department 28 of District Court, Steve.
Well, thank you, Jack. That's Jack Howard, candidate for Clark County District Court, Judge Department 28. And we encourage all our veterans and politics listeners to go out to the voting booth and cast your ballot for Jack Howard. He has been endorsed by us. This man has years and years of experience. He knows what he's doing. We recommend Jack Howard as your next judge for Clark County, he'll be the first judge for Clark County District Court, Department 28. Thank you so much, Jack. And we'll be back with Stan Vaughan. He's an independent American candidate for Nevada State Assembly, District 15.
Hi, my name is Ken Walther, and I'm the conservative veteran small business owner, candidate for Assembly District 18. I ask you to visit my web, kenfornevada.com. That's Ken, number 4, Nevada.com, to see what my issues and plans are. We need smaller government, not bigger, and we all need to pull together. This is Ken Walther, kenfornevada.com. Join me in taking Assembly District 18 back for the people. I approve this message. Thank you.
Paid for by the Friends of Ken Walther.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
And we're back. This is Steve Sampson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. And we're here live in studio with Stan Vaughan, who's the IAP candidate for Nevada State Assembly District number 15. Stan, how you doing, sir?
Can you give us a bio about yourself, Stan?
Long-time resident. I've been here for over 23 years. ran for office many times against Arbery 4 times there. Ran for North Las Vegas City Council. Ran against for Senate District 4 in 2008 when I was endorsed by Veterans in Politics, which I very appreciated that year. And this year I'm running for State Assembly 15.
So, Stan, is it fair to say that you're a perennial candidate?
Yes, I would agree with that assessment. And normally I haven't been wanting to run the last few years, but I keep being asked. This last time, I was very surprised. I was asked by the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Independent Americans all to run. And I decided I didn't want to be tied down to having to make different concessions, and decided to accept the request of the Independent Americans.
Stan, I got one question that I ask every Independent American Party candidate.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between an Independent American Party candidate and a Republican?
There's a lot of differences there, and I think one of the things that you can see is how, for example, on the issue of immigration reform, that John McCain has now waffled on. That's a big issue, and that's been one of the big issues this year. Also, if you'll go onto the website www.iapn.org, you'll see one of the issues that I've been pushing is eminent domain reform. The federal government has about 91% of the land in Nevada, and the Republicans have never been, big on trying to do anything about that either.
Stan, have you been endorsed by the NRA?
In the past. I have not received anything this year. I've also been endorsed in the past by Gun Owners of America, which is even more pro-gun rights than the NRA even.
Because it looked like you're a pro-gunman. What's your feeling about concealed weapon and open carry?
I believe everybody should have that right, and it should be able to use a permit from another state and be able to use it here in this state.
What do you say to those voters that are going to ask you, should there not be some type of regulation? For instance, should someone just be able to walk down the street carrying a machine gun because the military has one?
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly that a machine gun is different from something for a personal sidearm or something like that.
That'd be a personal weapon for me.
But no, I mean, certainly you should be able to have one as a collector, or if you're involved with militia, national militia or state militia, different things like that.
So Stan, you ran for several different types of offices. Do you just want to get into office, or is there some kind of passion? Is there some kind of calling for you? And if so, what is it?
Well, when you say several different offices, not really. If you'll look at 2000, 2002, 2004, and 2006, it was specifically for running for Assembly 6 and 7 to get Morris Arbery out of there.
You don't like Morris?
Morris, we don't really have time to go into it here, but I think obviously what you've just seen in the paper is just a tip of the iceberg on problems that we've had. Where, for example, one of the things that I didn't like was that he had 7 houses, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and none of them were in North Las Vegas, which is where he was supposed to be representing.
Well, have you heard of stolen valor?
Yes, I have.
And how do you feel about your opponent?
Well, there are questions.
Your current opponent, one right now.
I understand. There are certainly open questions that have not been answered. He claims to have a machine gunner in service over in the Afghanistan and Iraq theaters, and I've challenged him on this to provide his MOS, proving that he had the machine gun qualification. I believe it's 330 or something like that.
Has he provided?
He has not. He's refused, and I've confronted him in person on it, and he's not provided that.
You know where I first met him?
Where is that?
In front of the Federal Building with 79 other people. You know what he was doing?
What was he doing?
Protesting against the war.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was protesting against the war, and myself and Nick Starlin, Army Ranger, who is for the war showed up in protest against them.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I first met him. And I asked several questions. I asked who's a registered voter, and not too many people put their hands up. I also asked who donned the uniform of the U.S. military. There's a couple people put their hands up. And I asked who actually served in combat. And Elliot Anderson didn't put his hand up.
That's interesting.
So now he's putting his hands up now. I'm confused.
Yeah.
So did he serve or didn't he serve? You should ask him for his DD-214.
That's what I did. I did ask that in writing.
Don't we have a what's that Information Act, Public Information Act that's out there?
Freedom of Public Information.
Freedom of Information.
You can get his DD-214
Yeah.
and see if he's actually did serve in combat.
You can actually sue him for it.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is he also claims to have been on inactive reserves for quite some time.
So and what's that?
If you're on inactive reserve,
that's not a vacation. I'm working, but I'm in the Bahamas.
Hey, Stan, just to change course just a little bit here on this. What are your demographics? And give us give the listeners a regional area that Assembly 15 falls under.
Yeah, the western side is eastern, just a little ways here from the station. And the eastern area is Nellis. On the north side, it's Sahara. On the south side, Tropicana. The demographics, unfortunately, for this particular race run about 70% Democrat, 15% Independent, and about 15% Republican. So I have to concede that I'm out here trying to educate people. It's a very, very big long haul, but I have had a lot of Democrats say that they'll support me. So we'll have to see what happens.
And what do you plan to do once, if elected? What do you plan to do once you're in the legislature?
Well, I think somebody that has a PhD in accounting and a master's in business administration, that I'm the best qualified of the three candidates to address issues of the economy. Okay. There's a lot of issues. Okay,
let me stop you right there, Stan.
Yeah.
When you say address issues, exactly what's the issue that you're going to address, and what is the solution for it?
Budget deficit is the big problem, and I think a solution is more transparency, finding out in every single department, just cutting a little bit here, a little bit there, so that we can get it down.
People ask me. They said, if you were in the legislature, what would you do? Would you increase taxes? Would you have more taxes? And I said, no, I don't think the thing is more taxes. I think that we need to find other revenue sources. Are you for more taxes, or are you for additional revenue sources? And if you are for additional revenue sources, what revenue sources do you think that you'd want to establish in the state of Nevada?
Steve, one of the things, you can get additional revenue sources by promoting small business. You've got to cut taxes, make it cheaper. For example, with the company I'm associated with, Smarter Barter. I'm a barter organization. That's another way that...
Not harder.
No, barter.
Okay.
B-A-R-T-E-R. Just like the chickens for medical care that Sue Loudon was talking about.
I was trying to make it funny.
Yeah. But you take a look at the business licenses going up from $125 to about $350. That's just an example right there, that it's making it harder for small businesses to start up. And just one example of many there. And the economy needs to be looking for different ways. But you can also look at things, for example, how there's a tremendous underground economy. If you go out to places like Broadacres, and there's just a tremendous thousands and thousands of people engaging in an underground economy, no taxes being collected and things like that.
So, Stan, now that you say that, that leads me to another question. What is your position on illegal immigration, specifically the Arizona bill?
I'm in for it. In fact, I've drafted a bill similar to that. The Chad Christensen bill is not going to be on the ballot, from what I understand. I would draft a bill, if elected, to get that in there. I'm for legal immigration. Both my first and my second wife, they were Canadians and Russians. And
you couldn't find a good American?
Well, But they both.
It's like that governor from what, Rhode Island, I think it was. What was that? governor?
No, it was South Carolina.
South Carolina had to go all the way to Argentina to find a
But they both did it the correct way. They went through the process and did it the way they're supposed to.
Stan, real quick, we have 3 minutes. And
Uh-huh.
I understand that you used to be a professional chess player.
Still am. I'm the current.
Maybe we should have a game one day, because I was pretty good in high school, by the way.
Well, I defended the WCF World Championship title at the Riviera over up here in 2009 against the Armenian, and I'm currently.
You're always with these foreigners.
Yeah. Well, chess is an international game. It's
did
played
you
all
win?
over the world. Yeah, I defended the title. I hold it until 2011, at which time I'll be playing a gentleman named Ron Gross.
You know, that's impressive, because playing chess is a game of thought.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have to think about your moves like 5 moves before.
Yeah, and sometimes even longer than that. And that's one of the things. You were talking about things about if you can get into the assembly. We just got talking about psychological problems. Mental health resources are very low in this state. These kind of issues have not been addressed.
Hell, we don't even have a
extent.
blind center in the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in passing legislation to talking about other revenue sources to maybe legalize and put restrictions and tax marijuana, and maybe have a state lottery? Anything like that ever came across your mind?
If you recall, when I was running against Steve, who's the current majority leader in the Senate for the Democrats. Hartsford, yeah, I'm sorry.
You don't
Steve,
like him?
No, it's not that I don't like him. I disagree with a lot of his positions. And, for example, things like, he wants to promote green jobs, but he wants to have the living wage requirement, which means all the green jobs are going to be taken by Utah because they don't charge as much for wages. But one of the things, for example, is he passed that Senate Bill 50, which is giving tax revenue to illegal immigrants to go to college ahead of those who are children of taxpayers. But various things like that we talked about.
Okay. Well, Stan, could you give us your point of contact?
Yeah, it's www.iapn. That's for Independent American Party of Nevada, iapn.org, and just go in there and click on the Stan Vaughan section. It'll give you some of the bills, the eminent domain bills, the Arizona stuff, and definitely some things and they're welcome. There's contact info there where they can contact me. Okay. Happy to address their concerns.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show, Stan.
Okay.
Jim?
You're welcome.
Yeah, Stan, I just want to say good luck in your race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan.
Appreciate you coming in.
That's Stan Vaughan, who's the Independent American Party candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 15. And, folks, we need to pay attention to these third-party candidates out there. We got to stop looking at the first and second and start looking at all the party candidates. And when you think that you're throwing away your vote, throwing away a vote to me is not voting. Vote with your heart. Vote with your conscience. Vote who you think that's best going to serve your community, not because they have a political title behind their names, okay?
Because nothing is actually going to change unless you start making a statement with your vote. And
exactly.
That's the only people have died and lost blood for you to have the privilege to be able to go to a voting booth and have your voice heard. So please don't ever think you're throwing a vote away.
And before we go to commercial break, I'd like to thank Stan Vaughan, who's an Independent American Party candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 15, and to let people know that the Shine Foundation is going to be holding a candidates night on October 9th between the hours of 3 to 7 p.m. at the 5th Street School. So I don't have that contact information, but if you give me a call at 283-8088, I could give you more information on that. And we'll be back momentarily with Rob Baer, candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 32.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
Well, we are back, Jim. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. And we have live in studio in the flesh Rob Baer, who's a candidate for Clark County District Court Judge, Department 32. Rob, how you doing, sir?
Great, Steve. How about yourself?
I'm doing real good. Rob, could you give us a bio about yourself?
Well, I graduated law school from the University of Pittsburgh in 1988, and I was offered a job at a big law firm there with about 200 lawyers in it. But I came home, and I decided to surprise my father. My dad served 27 years in the Army. My dad now is buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
God bless him.
2 Purple Hearts.
2?
Yeah. And so anyway, when I graduated law school, despite having that job offer at that big private law firm, I decided to join the Army to surprise the old man. I'll never forget that moment. I guarantee you he was surprised when I told him I was going to be an Army lawyer as opposed to a private lawyer right there in the town we were close to, So
you were a JAG.
I was a JAG. I signed up for 3 years and served a little bit more than 4 years because I was in court every day, and I loved the experience of the court-martial proceedings. And, frankly, I'd have stayed as long as they let me stay in court every day, and I think I set a record. But they have an interesting thing there. They move you around a lot. And so anyway, continuing my story about my career, in 1993, after serving in the Army for a little more than 4 years, I think my DD-214 says 4 years, 2 months, and 9 days. But anyway, I showed up here in Nevada because I heard it was the land of opportunity, and it sure has been for me, because I've been the chief prosecutor for the State Bar of Nevada for the last 17 years. In August, it was just went over 17 years as the prosecutor for the State Bar, trusted to do that by the Supreme Court all these years. So your listeners may have heard, unfortunately, in the news many times about lawyers being disbarred or suspended from the practice of law. Well, I've been trusted as the prosecutor in those cases for the last 17 years. In fact, you might have heard about the Jeannie Winkler case, where I think I took about 20 hours to put that case on here just a few months ago. And the recommendation to our Supreme Court is that Ms. Winkler be permanently disbarred from the practice of law for stealing a bunch of money from her clients. But that's what I've been doing. And then there's one other part of it. In 2007, I was very fortunate to actually get full-time judicial experience. The city council in Las Vegas appointed me unanimously to serve as a municipal court judge every day from January through July 2007. Now, a little-known fact is that once I got selected for that position, though it was full-time, it was temporary from its inception, meaning that when the time ran, you had to go back and be a lawyer again. Well, what people don't know is I actually submitted my letter of resignation to my employer. I'd been at the State Bar as its prosecutor at that time for about 15 years. And the executive director and president of the bar did not accept my letter of resignation. Instead, they handed it back to me and offered me a leave of absence so I could go be a judge every day for almost 7 months and then come back and be their lawyer again. So that's the story of my career, and so obviously now you can tell I've been a pretty lucky guy.
Rob, you have been a JAG. You've seen and heard about what's going on in the 2 combat theaters, Afghanistan and Iraq. What's your take on prosecuting and court-martialing all these military servicemen and women for war crimes, especially the one with the photos taken of that one prison? I forgot the name of it, Jim.
Yeah, it escapes me now, too.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about prosecuting our military servicemen who actually put themselves in harm's way, fighting for freedom and experiencing the hardship of war, and to come back to our own country or our allied country and face a court-martial for some type of war crime?
Well, as fate would have it, I actually did get deployed in Operation Just Cause on December 20th, 1989. I was sitting at my desk, and the next thing I knew, I was at Travis Air Force Base on a C-5 landing at Omar Torrijos Airport in Panama, where I spent 3.5 months in the jungle. And when we came back from that, I had clients. I was the one chosen to represent people who had gone through those sort of allegations and were charged with various crimes. Not really conventionally known at that time as war crimes per se, but criminal offenses under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I mean, I had about 5 or 6 clients that I ended up representing. I was proud to represent them, and because what starts to happen when you get into those cases is you start to see the real facts and circumstances surrounding the real hardships that people go through when they serve. And, I've developed a real good understanding, of course, of post-traumatic stress disorder and a lot of other things that people really go through, that they really go through when they're in those sort of situations. And so you obviously have to, consider those things and figure out to give it a real fair frame of reference as to why an individual person who happens to be also a service member may have been involved in a fact pattern that unfortunately ends up putting them in front of a court-martial.
Do you think that a military service member serving in combat should be given some type of diplomatic diplomacy, or some kind of amnesty against any type of war crimes?
I don't think you can have a carte blanche immunity in that regard because, as service members, you are sworn to uphold the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And it's not as though you just can, commit crimes and not be accountable.
And you have to follow Geneva Convention as well, like the other countries are following.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, there's a whole interesting story having to do with the Geneva and Hague Conventions, which has led to a body of law known as operational law. You might have heard about war crimes having to do with that. But, where it really comes into play, actually, is in a weird area. It's where people in combat try to take trophies from the country that where the war is at, and the people end up getting in trouble for that.
Have you seen that movie Casualties of War with Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox?
I have not seen that. I've never seen the TV show Jag either, because I tend not to watch these theatrical versions.
In that movie, apparently a bunch of soldiers, they raped the Vietnamese woman. They took her out of her village. They kidnapped her. Now, I could understand them being prosecuted for such an act. But what I can't understand is that one incident when one of the in Iraq, when one of the troops, one of the Marines, were blown up, and the Marines went into the village looking for people that actually did this, and they killed women, and there was some children there. I know when your mind starts going and things happen, and you see your fellow Marine on the ground dead, and you know that the cause of it was from this direction, and you're going down there to hunt these people down. I could understand that, and I don't think that the UCMJ should apply for that. It's just my personal belief. And civilians don't understand this, Rob. And when that all came out, they said, well, these Marines, they killed women and children, blah, blah, blah. And I said like this. I said, what happens if I understand not to take the law in your own hands, okay? What happens if you're walking down the street of New York City and you were there with your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your wife, and your kids, and some sniper on the roof of one of those buildings decided to gun down your wife and your daughter? What would run through your mind if you had the means to go over there and defend them? What would you do?
Well, I mean, there's a whole body.
I'll call 911. Yeah. No, bullcrap.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, there's a term of art applied in the law called crime of passion, and it's all, really, when it comes down to that, it's all about mental state. And that really segues into something I wanted to say that I heard earlier in the program today. When I get elected to District Court Department 32, I'm going to ask to be the Veterans Court Judge. I've looked at that legislation. I'm proud that the last legislature enacted, the Veterans Court. And frankly, I mean, there's a lot of people who would have qualifications to preside over Veterans Court, but I'd like to do it. I'd be honored to do it, and I'm going to ask to do it when I get elected. I just wanted you to know that.
Very good. I think Jackie Glass has that position
she
right
does,
now from Jennifer Elliott.
Yeah.
Jim?
Well, Rob, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, because of your past experience, what would you say to those listeners that would say, as a judge, you might be a little more biased to the prosecuting side of it rather than the defense attorney?
Well, I was essentially a public defender the first 4 years of my career. I defended soldiers that were charged with crimes my whole time as a JAG officer, and I've been the chief prosecutor for the state bar now for 17 years. So I've been on both sides.
Explain that position, chief prosecutor for the state bar. Explain that.
Well, there's a bunch of statutes that define what I'm supposed to do, but essentially my job is created by a Supreme Court rule. So I work for the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, in the entire state of Nevada every year, we get close to 2,000 complaints from members of the public against lawyers. And so I'm entrusted with handling each and every one of those complaints. And in the worst case scenarios, of course, they end up being full-blown trials where a lawyer's law license is on the line. And so that's essentially what I do in those prosecutions.
So, Rob, what would you say to those people, those listeners out there that might say, okay, you're overseeing these complaints of lawyers. Well, now that you've so what about if you've oversaw a case against a lawyer, and now that same lawyer appears in front of you once you become district court judge?
That could actually. I've thought about that a lot, and when I was in municipal court every day as a judge, there were a few lawyers that came in who I had cases either against as them representing somebody in a prosecution, or even situations where the person was actually the lawyer who I prosecuted. And, I felt as though I had a duty to still serve as a judge, and that's what I did. But if a lawyer comes into court and says, you prosecuted me, and there was a public discipline that occurred, I do think that could be an issue that I'll just have to deal with when it comes up. And as I've always been in my whole legal career, I'll tell it the way I think it and the way I really believe it. And if I should recuse based upon the specific facts, I would.
So how would you go about recusing yourself?
Well, in that scenario, I think I'd look at the type of case that I handled as the prosecutor concerning this lawyer. There are very few lawyers out there, I think, if any, that would actually ask for this to occur. Because one thing I should tell you is, and it's an incredible thing I've been lucky to have, is lawyers in this state, and please, if you're listening to this, ask a lawyer about me. Everybody respects me. And what I mean by that is, even the lawyers who I've prosecuted respect me, because they see now, after going through it, that I did it in a fair way. And even those that have been suspended have a respect for me. So,
Rob, could you give us your point of contact, please?
Sure. It's the best thing is my website. It's just robbear.us. And by the way, thank you so much for the Veterans in Politics endorsement. That one meant, to me personally, it meant the most. So thank you for that.
Well, folks, thank you, Rob Baer, for coming on the show. That's Rob Baer, who's a candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 32, and he is the Veterans in Politics endorsement winner, so we encourage all our listeners to go out and vote for Rob Baer. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Until next week.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again.